All right, let's get reaction to that address now. The DA's leader, John Steenhuisen, joining us. John, thanks for your time. We appreciate it. We will get to vaccines in a moment, but let me first start with the restrictions on alcohol sales. What do you reckon?
Well, obviously, there's very little room for government to move. I mean, you're supposed to have used lockdowns to improve the hospital capacity. That hasn't happened. And it's very clear that the restrictions that we've heard this evening are, the only move government has in its playbook, because we have not done the one thing that we should have done, which is vaccinate and vaccinate at scale. And so we go into this third wave, one of the least vaccinated countries on the continent, and indeed the world. And I think that it's a real pity that this is the only move that government has.
John, I know you say that government hasn't prepared properly for this third wave. Lots of experts would say that they have, though. We spoke to the MAC co-chair a little earlier. She says that everything has been done to make sure we're ready and that we are actually ready. But you are disagreeing with that.
Yeah, I'm disagreeing with that. And, I'm in Gauteng. I've spent the day in Gauteng. I've visited a number of hospital sites here in Gauteng. And, the Charlotte Macleay Hospital burnt down a 1,000-bed ward in the 16th of April. It remains unrepaired. Those 1,000 beds would be critical for Gauteng, which is about to go through a major spike in infections. They're now 1,000 beds short there. I mean, what has happened in April, May, and June to date to get those back online? One of the reasons why we're going into curfew and alcohol restrictions is because the hospital capacity in many provinces is not there, and that is the reason why government has to move into this curfew and ban on alcohol and movement and gatherings.
Yeah, I totally get you, but we're also seeing lots of irresponsible behavior from people, right, who are gathering in large numbers at bars, etc.
Yes, of course. And I mean, I think that, restrictions are there for a reason and they need to be adhered to. And I think that, unfortunately, because we've been in lockdown for so long, I think there is a COVID fatigue that is set. And we've had one of the longest and hardest lockdowns in the world. And I think there is a sense of fatigue that is sitting. And obviously we must resist that and ensure that we keep the protocols going, the hand washing, the wearing of masks, and obviously social distancing, and restricting those big gatherings that turn into super spreader events, particularly in a time of the third wave. So any irresponsible behavior, I think it's incumbent on all of us as citizens to ensure that we play our part in flattening the curve. But I think consequently there's also a responsibility on government to do what it should be doing, and that is to vaccinate at scale to get us out of this terrible cycle of lockdowns.
So let's talk a bit more about the vaccination process. I know the Democratic Alliance has for a long time said government has made the wrong moves and that it hasn't done enough to procure vaccines. Yet the president denied, saying that it's on the uptick and that at least 80,000 people are being vaccinated on average daily. He seems to be satisfied. You clearly are not.
No, it's not satisfying, because if you extrapolate those numbers out, what we want to do is to reach that magic herd immunity. At a pace of between 70 to 80,000 a day, we'll only reach that by 2029 and thereabouts. What we want to do is to get as many jabs and arms and be vaccinating at scale. That means we've got to be doing it, in much bigger numbers that's been rolled out today. Government has missed every one of its deadlines or targets that it set for itself. We were told 1 million people by the end of March. Well, we've only just passed the 2 million mark, and it's June. The president likes to throw out big numbers, and I think a lot of people get taken in by this. But what was not there tonight, and I think it's what all political parties across the spectrum are asking for, with one voice almost, if you look at the statements and comments coming out of them, is, well, what is the plan? How are we going to move from 70,000 to 250,000 or 300,000? And that's what's missing. There's not to date been a comprehensive plan put on a tabled in Parliament, shared with the public, about how we're going to move that. It's one thing to wish and expect to get to those numbers, but you've got to have a plan to get there. And that plan is, unfortunately, the missing puzzle piece here that South Africans are none the wiser about, and parties in Parliament are none the wiser about. And when we keep asking for this, we keep being told, oh, well, it's coming, and there's all these obstacles in the way. But there's no comprehensive plan on the table to which we can hold government accountable as a political party, and which you as the media can hold government accountable to make sure it's meeting its targets.
Yeah, you know, you're absolutely right. Whenever the president speaks, we hear about 2 million doses arriving at the end of this month and more doses arriving next week, etc. But it's nowhere close to how many people need to be vaccinated in this country. Of course, the Democratic Alliance has asked for an inquiry into the slow vaccine rollout. Where are you with achieving this process?
Well, we've written to the Speaker, and we hope that she's going to take us into, take Parliament seriously. I think one of the big criticisms that come out of the Zondo Commission is Parliament's inability to hold the executive accountable. There's clearly a problem here. As I said, we're behind countries like Zimbabwe, Sierra Leone, Malawi, others on the continent who have vaccinated far more people than we've been able to. There clearly is a problem here, and we need to learn from it. This is not going to be the last pandemic that South Africa faces. And so we need to make sure that we understand exactly where the problems went wrong and what we need to do in future to make sure that we're better prepared. That cannot come with sort of this blanket denial that government didn't drop the ball. It absolutely did drop the ball, and the intervening interventions that have taken place have not been sufficient to make up that time that was lost. And that is why we're sitting with many South Africans who are now vulnerable because they have not been able to receive the vaccine, the one thing that would be able to get them through this third wave safely.
All right. Pleasure talking to you. Appreciate your time this hour. Of course, that is the DA's leader, John Steenhuisen.